Well, good evening, everybody. Okay, this video is connected with tomorrow's lesson. Okay, recently, a famous actor, Alex Baldwin, was just basically he's been charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Now, what happened? Well, in October of 2021, he was filming a movie that he starred in himself, titled Rust. All right, it's an old Western type movie. The story goes is that he's a grandfather who is taking his 13-year-old grandson in hiding because the 13-year-old was facing the death penalty for a crime he didn't commit. Okay. Well, while on set, while practicing with firearms and such the day before, on set, Alec Baldwin was handed a prop gun. Now, a prop gun is basically a firearm that is either incapable of firing live ammunition, or it's a real firearm that has been loaded with blank rounds so that a bullet doesn't come out of the end of the barrel. Well, somehow a live round ended up in that gun. Now, Alec Baldwin is because he aimed the firearm at a person and ended up killing that person. Now, he's making the claim that the gun went off. He didn't pull the trigger. Well, that was one of the claims. He might be changing that. Who knows? Now, I want to dispel some things. Before we do that, I just want to cover a few things, all right, before we delve into why I think he is in deep trouble, okay, with the state of New Mexico. The state of New Mexico has a different view for him and the set's armorer, okay? Now, this is the type of firearm that he would have used on set. It's called a single-action revolver. Now, a single-action revolver is one where the trigger performs one function. It releases the hammer. Now, to load this particular type of firearm, now I have dummy ammunition here. These are machine blocks. Basically, it's machined aluminum with a little rubber spot where the primer would go. Now, to load this type of firearm, number one, we're always going to follow the 3 basic safety rules, all right? We're going to keep the firearm pointed in a safe direction. The safe direction is one where if the gun were to go off, there would be the least amount of damage. Number 2, we're going to keep our finger off the trigger until we're ready to shoot. Number 3, we're going to keep it unloaded until we're ready to shoot. If you follow those 3 basic rules, and in Massachusetts, make sure it's locked up so that unattended hands can't get to it, you shouldn't have a single problem, okay? Accidents are the results of basically negligence and ignorance. Now, single-action revolver, how does it operate? You flip the loading gate open, okay? Now, you take your cartridges, again, these are dummy cartridges, and you manually insert them into the cylinder. So you're going to have to load it one shot at a time, okay? Well, sometimes they fall out of your hand, all right? So don't forget, when this thing was made, or this style of action was made, in 1836, and it served even up until now, all right? This type, this was pretty high tech. Close the loading gate. Now we're going to consider this to be a loaded firearm. Now, again, I said the single action revolver is a revolver where the trigger performs one function. When you press it, it releases the hammer. Now, what do you mean by single action? For every shot, you have to manually cock the hammer. Okay? So when I press the trigger, the hammer falls, ignites the cartridge, and the firearm goes off. I can pull on this thing, as you can see, all day long. Nothing will happen. But if I cock the hammer back and pull the trigger, if there's a live round in the cylinder, it will go off. So every time I want to shoot this, I'm going to have to cock the hammer for every single shot. And then to unload it, I would have to flip open the loading gate and drop the cartridges out. Now, there's an ejection rod that's used to force cartridges out because they'll stick to the walls of the cylinder, the chamber in the cylinder. Okay. So as I load this out. Now, Mr. Baldwin, he claims that he didn't pull the trigger. Now, unless this firearm was handed to him in a cocked position, okay, and somehow he inadvertently touched a trigger, this gun will not go off. You can pull on this thing all day long. Nothing's going to happen. Now, I just want to contrast it with what is called a double action. Okay, a double action. Now, this is a hunting revolver. It's got a red dot sight. A double action revolver. Okay, we're going to check to see if it's unloaded. Okay, it's unloaded, as you can see. All right. We're going to take our dummy cartridges and put them in there because I want to demonstrate, how this works and compare the two of them so that we can, maybe come up with an idea what happened. Okay. Now, this particular revolver, the trigger performs two functions. It can cock and release the hammer. Now, I can cock the hammer back, and the trigger pull is going to be a very light, short trigger pull. It's just going to be, a couple of pounds for accurate long-distance shooting. As you can tell with this red dot, this is for, hunting deer and bear and wild pigs and stuff like that. So you just barely touch the trigger. Of course, this is a performance center model, so it's it's been customized to an extent. Or I could just pull the trigger itself, and it will cock and release the hammer and fire a shot. Now, the double action, the trigger pull is long and heavy, so you have to pull. You're pulling it. It's not an accident if you pull this trigger, because it takes about maybe 12 to 15 pounds of pressure on the trigger to cock and release the hammer, whereas if the hammer is cocked, it just doesn't take but a little bit of pressure to release it. Okay, and I'll put that over on the side. So now we're going to read in the tomorrow's reading assignment. We're going to read about what happened on the set and what charges are being brought up by the state of New Mexico against Mr. Baldwin and his armorer, the person who's responsible for arming the set for the movie. Okay, and I want your thoughts. What do you think? Do you think Alex Baldwin is guilty of involuntary manslaughter? He claims he never pulled the trigger, but how could it have gone off? Okay, so on that note, I'll see you guys tomorrow.